Blackhawks fans, welcome to a brand new edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I am Ron Luce, joined this evening by Mr. Tony Marchese. Tony, before we get into things and I ask you how you are, we're having a little bit of an X issue that we're troubleshooting. So if you're joining us on the tube, we appreciate it. And we might be sending out a little PSA over on X, encouraging people to head over to the YouTube or Facebook because something's wrong with our X connection this evening. But Tony, how you doing, my friend?
Ron, I'd be doing a lot better if we had the technology working that's supposed to work. But we're working through that, Ron. I was actually also trying to grab the YouTube link and get that tweeted out there, or X posted out there, whatever have you. But if you wanna toss it out from Four Feathers, where they can find us on our youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet should get the job done, Ron.
Indeed.
Hey man, it's good to be back on these airwaves. And again, apologies to anybody tuning into the live. Ron looks like diligently working on getting that posted. Ron, it's good to be back talking Blackhawks hockey. I know that it was a bit of a weekend for the Blackhawks in terms of some up and down play. I started last weekend. I'll just get right into this one, Ron. Started last weekend very disappointed in the way the Blackhawks were playing. I might have left you not one, not two, maybe three voicemails on my ride home from the United Center on Friday evening. Was very, very disappointed in the way our Blackhawks played, but I'm feeling better now after winning. Winning cures everything, and we're talking to everybody after a win right now, and that's feeling good. Ron, is it up on the Four Feathers X account?
We are nearly there, Tone. I am just about to hit post on the tweet. We got the YouTube link out there for everybody.
There we go.
On the old X machine, of course. Hopefully we'll get some more people joining us here in just a second. That is posted and published, sir. If you would not mind sharing that out for me, that would be greatly appreciated. But
yep,
no, Ton, it's good to be back. We got our boy Skokes in the comments. Dudes, what's up? And a happy Wednesday to you as well, Daniel Barry. Good to see everyone. Tony, I'm doing well, man. I'll tell you what, we're running a little earlier than we normally do, so this is kind of fun, a little bit of adjustment. Yes, I am wearing a winter hat or a toque, depending on what part of North America you live in.
Are you chilly over there, Ron?
No, I just wanted to change it up a little bit. Admittedly, a regular ball cap tends to pull on my hair when I have to gel my hair like I did today. So,
oh boy.
Just a little bit
of some work then.
Yeah, we were
professional work.
Ooting a boot in the Chicagoland area. So just to switch it up, look something different. And speaking of looking different, Tony, that's kind of the theme of this show, because this one is Blackhawks completely turning the page. This is kind of a new era of Blackhawks hockey. Yes, you did leave me 3 incredible, borderline Emmy-winning voicemails that I think everybody should hear from the United Center parking lot after Friday's loss. But you know what, Tone? Like, we kind of talked about it, you and I, a little bit over the weekend, right? And we're just kind of exchanging messages about the direction of this team. And I'm glad we get to kind of talk this out now, because last show, unfortunately, I was running solo. I know you were under the weather. There's some Kyle Davidson stuff now. There's 2 interviews out there in the public from him post-trade deadline that I think, have stirred up some conversation on the interwebs as well. So, it'll be good to get to all these and just kind of talk about kind of really, this is kind of the state of the Hawks and what will be kind of the next chapter in Blackhawks hockey. And, but Tony, I think before we talk about the present and the future, we got to honor the past, and that though the person who passed, Troy Murray, really sadly passing away on Saturday morning. Or at least that's when the news was shared. 63 years old. Blackhawks fans know he was battling cancer. That one sucks, and I wrote about it over at OnTapSportsNet.com.
I was just about to say, like, you wrote a very nice piece at ontapsportsnet.com in the Blackhawks section, a little tribute there to Troy Murray. Ron,
Yeah.
encourage, if anybody wants to head on over there and read it. I thought that was well done there, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. And it's different. I'll warn everybody right now. It's not what you would expect. It's not. If you want to read about his career and the things like that, I think the Blackhawks put out a really beautiful piece on him and everything he did in his career. And there was a quote from Danny Wirtz, and that was incredibly well done. And stick taps, maybe a little premature, not on my radar for stick taps today, but stick taps to the Blackhawks for doing a great job with that. But the way I approached it, Tone, was more so in the sense of just the emotions that were going through my head. And, I didn't know Troy Murray personally. In fact, I never had the honor of meeting him in person. But I think I am in the same boat as many Blackhawks fans, including our enforcer here at Four Feathers Podcast, Mr. Patrick Comiskey, who did a great job finding some of Troy's best calls from over the years, especially during those cup runs. With the Hawks and posting those and sharing those on X, did a phenomenal job. Encourage everybody to head over to his page as well if you're looking for some of those. But just kind of the raw reaction and raw emotion to, just him passing away and just, knowing I was going to see people I'm close to that day, and just a slew of different things that really, just it kind of hit home. So yeah, if you want to go read it, it's definitely something different. I admittedly made my wife cry when she read it. So take that as your warning. It's a little sappy.
You're getting a little teary-eyed there talking about this. And I think being there at Monday's game, Ron, and just the amount of people who were, impacted by Troy Murray, whether it was the player version of Troy Murray, the continuation of that, myself, someone who was not really around to see Troy Murray play actually in a Blackhawks uniform or even remember it. Ron, I know that you never had the opportunity either.
Definitely not.
Up as a Blackhawks fan, Troy Murray as a radio analyst for the Chicago Blackhawks, and Ron, you do some analyst and play-by-play work, calling games and everything, and outside of just doing this podcast and everything else you do, that's something that I would have to say that I'd venture to guess that Troy Murray impacts you when you're performing that as something that you're doing, and just the impacts that he's had down on so many people, whether it be his time in the booth, his time on the ice. I've unfortunately been at a couple of Blackhawks games, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. I'm not really sure how to put that in words, where the Blackhawks community has celebrated the life of someone who's recently passed away. That's meant a lot to the organization, and I will say they do a hell of a job of doing so. Same thing with celebrating their accolades. But to me, it's a lot more of the fans too that show up, and that Blackhawks community that's really strong. You see, we posted this from the Four Feathers account, Ron. The Troy Murray banner that was hanging right below the press box there, and the booths, and just the way that Blackhawks fans came out, and I think there's a little bit of poetry in Frank Nazar and the call on the radio there, 91-19, and how the Blackhawks end up winning that game. I thought it was a really cool moment, something that you can look at. But Ron, I thought you had a beautiful tribute to Troy Murray there.
Yeah, thank you. No, and I'm glad you were able to share the perspective of being at the game on Monday, and like you said, just the Blackhawks, when it comes to honoring people that were either part of the organization or around the organization, first class when it comes to things like that. So to your point, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, depending on how I guess you're approaching it, being a part of stuff like that. We got a couple more people joining us, and a little bit more on this fire, Nico. He says, it's Sacha
Yes.
Boisvert watch. Haha, oops. Not literal watch. We are not watching Sacha Boisvert, and we'll talk about that as well because he didn't play or isn't playing it right now as we're recording for Boston University against Vermont, but they are up 4-1, so they are going to continue their season, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But
yeah, I've got something for you too on that one, Ron, because we were discussing this afternoon on the Boisvert stuff. So remind me. Anthony Tony had a comment in, and he
scored on Monday.
Yeah, he scored on Monday.
Big
the
one.
half
He needed
Michigan,
that one.
the half Michigan too.
Yeah, I've seen it being called the Upper Peninsula. Is kind of fun.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, that one's been kind of fun.
That's a bit interesting. That tickles the right way. The Upper Peninsula goal.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's been some pretty good ones, some pretty funny ones. But yeah, we're gonna touch on all that here as the comments continue to pour in, and appreciate everybody that's jumping in the conversation here as we get this thing rolling. Tony, now we can look to the future and what this episode is more about. That is the Blackhawks completely turning the page. Since our last show was completely covering the trades that had happened up to that point. So the Jason Dickinson trade, along with Colton Dock to Edmonton, as well as Connor Murphy going to Edmonton in 2 separate deals. What the Blackhawks got in return, all of that good stuff. Well, now, since that recording on Friday, Nick Foligno was moved. He was moved to the Minnesota Wild for future consideration so he could go play with his brother in what I think most people are expecting to be his final season in the NHL, which is really cool. If anybody hasn't seen the report on how Nick told Marcus about the trade, go find that. Because it was really neat to see the exchange of Nick calling him and saying, "Hey, I got traded," and Marcus is like, "Oh, well, good for you, maybe like go compete." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll see you in a couple hours." And it's cool to know that he's going to get a chance to, even if it's for 19 regular season games, 20 regular season games, plus any playoff run that the Wild have, he's going to get to lace up the skates with his brother in his what we expect is his final season. So that's pretty cool. But that was the only other trade that the Blackhawks made on Friday, Tone, at the trade deadline. You weren't on the last show with me, so any quick thoughts just regarding the trade deadline, Nick Foligno moving on specifically, and again, kind of this is now that first piece. You trade your captain. They're turning the page.
Yes, they are, Ron. They're definitely turning the page. I think, I want to say that we talked about this as a potential possibility multiple times this year. Nick Foligno leaving the team. And, we got as far as to say earlier this season that it really wouldn't bother us if Nick Foligno leaves. I believe I remember a night where we had our guy Matt Voodoo in the comments over here and decided, it's because he's old and he sucked this year. And I don't think that that's too far off, from the base of what we got from Nick Foligno. Mm-hmm. I think, over the course of this, a lot of this was leadership behind the scenes stuff that the Blackhawks wanted him here for. And at the time, that is definitely what they needed. But I kind of felt like as we entered this season, it was a little worn. And this might have been something I could say for a Ruffle Some Feathers segment, Ron, but it kind of felt like entering this season, his time as captain or leader of this team was sort of up comparative to when we used to call him de facto, right? When he was actually impacting the way things were in Connor Bedard's first season. So I was fine with this move. I think it just clears the way a little bit more for, a guy like Nick Lardis or someone else to come up and enter the lineup. But, I'm not trying to sit here and poo-poo all over Nick Foligno's time as captain. I think it was important. We're going to remember the way he fought in the Winter Classic because it was one of the only highlights that anybody could provide. And he just wanted to, get the crowd going. There were captain moments from Nick Foligno, and we advocated for his captaincy here. But it felt like it was time for them to part ways. And I'll just say this right now, Ron. I know that the common fan that I saw out there, the common take was like, oh yeah, go chase your cup up there in Minnesota. No, fuck Minnesota, Ron. I hope he doesn't get a cup. And that's how it should end for him. Should it be his last year, because I don't want to live in the world where the Minnesota Wild win a cup, but good for him to go play with his brother. That's my take here.
Well said, Tone. I own a shirt actually from our good friends over at Obvious Shirts. In case you didn't know, obviousshirts.com, on tap sports, use the code, you get 10% off your purchase over there. And it's a way to support us here at Four Feathers, support Cubs on Tap, Sox on Tap, the whole nine.
And save you money.
Yeah, and save some money along the way. But Joe makes great shirts. I'm sure anybody that's a Cubs fan is very familiar with Obvious Shirts. Even I think White Sox fans are pretty familiar with the brand, being a Chicago company. But I have one that was a Blackhawks one that he made years ago. This thing is, old. It's seen some things. But it's Minnesota has all that water and no cups. And I hope that continues and stays in play. I agree with you. I saw that too, and I was like, I can't actively root for the Wild. I just can't. I can't do it.
It won't happen.
Can't do it. I know. I appreciate Nick Foligno for everything he did. I hope they maybe win a playoff series and he gets to prolong his career a little bit longer. But I will be remiss if you see me cheering for the Minnesota Wild. Really at all, ever.
I'm glad you agree with this.
I do. I agree. I can't do it. I think.
And the same thing. We talked about this with Edmonton.
Right.
Like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to
see
Stan Bowman win another Stanley Cup because he brought in Connor Murphy. Like, that's always the common thing, right? Like, you want to root for your guys who went out there and have these, good stories and everything.
Yeah.
Everyone they traded this trade deadline. This is my trade deadline takeaway. Fuck them. I don't want to see any of them succeed. This summer.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I think when it comes to like Connor Murphy and Jason Dickinson, because I really don't foresee either of them probably re-signing in Edmonton, with them being impending free agents.
Yeah, go somewhere else and we'll figure it out.
Play well enough in Edmonton that you go get another payday, go to another contender. You go win in, hypothetically speaking, Vegas or anybody not really in the Central Division. Cool. Like, good for you. Awesome. I hope they do. Like, I hope Connor Murphy only plays playoff hockey for the rest of his career. But yeah, it really kind of stings this year. And Anthony told you a great point here. The year that St. Louis played Boston in the finals was hell. Yeah, it was like, can both teams lose and just the ice melt and nobody win the Stanley Cup? So certainly something to keep on. This also comes up with this question, Tony, and really quick about Foligno. His first 2 years in Chicago, he was a notable contributor. 17 goals, 15 goals in those first 2 years, over 35 points in both seasons. Yeah, we agree with you. We can't root for Bowman. I agree. I can't root for Bowman either. I've been calling for Bowman's head since 2012. So it's
we had that conversation this week too.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
You can go back in the Four Feathers archives and you can find some great content,
some good ones
of Ron Luce screaming about Stan Bowman.
He was given the keys to Ferrari
7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
That's how long we've been doing this.
It's been a hot minute, but Foligno contributed, right? But there was a steep fall off this year with his play. 11 points in 38 games. He was also hurt for some of the season too. Just an unfortunate year for him. It's cool to see him get what he wanted and go compete. And you're playing meaningful hockey now down the stretch. You're not watching the next era of Blackhawks hockey.
But it felt like the writing was on the wall with him almost, that he was potentially gonna leave at some point this season, Ron. And that's I felt like we had a different leader version. He wasn't as present in the media, even towards the back half of last season when the wheels were kind of falling off before the kids started to really take over. Yeah. And then you saw the messaging from Kyle Davidson. And I want to talk a lot about Kyle Davidson tonight as much as we can. But you saw the messaging from Davidson on how important it was for the youth to sort of take this thing over.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of some foreshadowing there. I don't think you're relying as much on the messaging of Nick Foligno or Jason Dickinson or a Connor Murphy as much as you probably were a calendar year beforehand. And so, we talked all about these specific names. I wasn't sure if Foligno was actually gonna go, or if he was just gonna retire here. He's got younger kids, they're in school, all that stuff. We've talked about the human element of the trade deadline and what you want to go do. The one thing that made sense for me was him going to Minnesota and playing with his brother, or back home to Columbus, which it seemed like they were interested as well too, from various different reports that were out there. And it was just, I didn't really feel like Nick Foligno had a place on this team probably back in November.
Yeah. I mean, he was largely relegated to the fourth line. So I agree with you, Tone. It was kind of the writing on the wall. And I think, too, that's probably what swayed his decision. I think if he was having a better statistical season and the Hawks were still kind of pushing a little closer to the playoff picture than they currently are, I think he probably sticks it out and tries to make the playoffs with the Hawks. But because of just kind of the state of the team, and I think he just, I think as the veteran he is, saw like, hey, all right, my 10 years here is done. Like, these guys are needing to step up and be the new leadership group. And you're starting to see that here. And this comes from Anthony Toney just a little bit earlier. Next season, he's asking, do you have 3 players with A's or do you give Bedard the C? Everything that's out there right now screams that Connor Bedard's going to be wearing the C next year. And you know what? Good for it. Jonathan Toews wore an A for a little bit and at various times before he was awarded the captaincy. Bedard's doing that now. We can see Bertuzzi wearing an A for a little bit as well. I'm surprised they're only rolling with 2 alternates, by the way, because you can have 3 alternates, as pointed out by Anthony Toney. They haven't named a third alternate captain, which I think is very interesting because to me, then that says, hey, next year, Bedard's going to wear your C. Bertuzzi's probably.
I'm sort of surprised it's not Alex Vlasic, to be honest with you.
Alex Vlasic.
I think there's a reason. I think there's a reason to believe, and this is just maybe a little bit of tinfoil hat theory here, that there's reason to believe that the fact that they didn't give Alex Vlasic an A could be looked into if you want to start to draw some conclusions onto how they feel about him at the moment. I don't know. That's just something that crossed my mind. Maybe a shower thought type thing there, Ron. But it's surprising that they didn't go with 3 A's here. Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not a third A. Lebowski says Hawks likely with 4 A's next year, no C. I disagree. I especially when Elliot Friedman speaks on stuff, it tends to come to fruition. I would be shocked if Bedard's.
Here's my tinfoil hat theory on this, Ron. You did your black jersey release this year, along with the Centennial jerseys. If you're the Hawks, if you want to back it up with another strong year of jersey sales, you do Connor Bedard with the C, and then all the people who bought regular Connor Bedard jerseys are going to go buy the Connor Bedard jersey with the C on it next year. There's a business reason to do it.
There is a business reason to do it. But I think too, I will say this, Kyle Davidson, and we'll get to some of the interviews here in a little bit because I do want to just get through the 3 games and anything that we took away from those before we talk KD. But he was on CHGO this afternoon, CHGO Blackhawks, with Greg Boysen, who was filling in for Mario Tirabassi, and then Jay Zawalski. And he mentioned, they talked about kind of the captaincy with Bedard type thing. And the way he put it was, they're only going to do it as well if it makes sense for the team and they'll respond well. The team's going to respond well to Connor Bedard getting the captaincy. You see him more talking to the media. He's kind of becoming that true face of the franchise now. It's going to happen. And I would be Lebowski. I'd be very, very surprised if that's what happens. And I'm not trying to just call out individual people, just based on what I've seen and now heard from even Kyle Davidson's mouth, it kind of suggests that Bedard's going to get to see. Jason Hawks fan has a question that we'll certainly get to in a little bit here, but I do want to highlight this comment. Foligno's productivity was significantly reduced. His leadership had run its course during another season with nothing to play for. Well said, 100%. And then our good friend Seth Conklin says they should form a leadership council instead of having captains. Please no. I feel like they referred to the leadership council when it was Seth Jones and Foligno and Murphy as the A's, and we all saw how that kind of went. So I don't want to see that shit ever again.
The whole leadership council aspect here, Ron, I'm a little worried that that's in the cards just because they've done it before and they have precedence for it. I think the business reasons will honestly win out, and they're going to want to sell Connor Bedard C jerseys alongside the fact that Connor Bedard is this team. And I think that that's part of, the next contract negotiations that we're going to have this summer. Hey, you're going to be our captain. You're going to lead this team. And I think that that's something that they enter this offseason with as, something that's in the Blackhawks camp on how they get this done. So I fully expect Connor Bedard to be the next captain of the Chicago Blackhawks. Is that the best move at this juncture? I think only time is going to tell.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But I think him wearing an A for the rest of the season does speak volumes, and I think the team has largely responded well. Really, outside of maybe one brutal period of hockey on Friday night in the third period, these three games
spurred three angry voicemails to Ron Luce's phone.
That spurred very angry voicemails to my phone. They were very, very fun. Well, we're gonna try to share them before the season's over on these airwaves. So be ready for those. I'm very much looking forward to those. But Tony, let's just talk really quick here a little bit about the three games. We don't have to get into super detail because I know you want to talk Kyle Davidson. I want to talk a little bit about Sacha Boisvert and why that's part of kind of the description for tonight's episode of the Sacha Boisvert Watch. And then, of course, our habitual segments of ruffling feathers and stick taps. But I think from these last three games, there's been some good, there's been some bad. Specifically that third period on Friday night that you sadly had to witness in person. I was able to sell my tickets for that game. So I was also a little under the weather, so it kind of worked out.
So the second time I've taken NWI Steve to a Hawks game this year that's gone fucking poorly.
That's the problem. I told it right to his face when I saw him last time that we were all at a game together. He said, I haven't seen them win yet this year. And I said, I have. You're the problem. And I think he is. I think NWI Steve's just horrendous negativity just stinks up the United Center every time he's there, and the Blackhawks respond accordingly. So not to take
this is not a good look for him.
Not to take swinging shots from the top rope here, but NWI Steve might be hashtag banned from the UC for.
We might need a ban list, and he might be the first on it.
You know why? Because this is the universe. Because we all know he's a noted CM Punk hater, and CM Punk's such a big Hawks fan. This is the universe's way of saying, well, since you're gonna hate on CM Punk, I'm gonna spit in your eye and make the Blackhawks suck when you go see them in person. I'm with Voodoo here. Ban him from the UC for the rest, at least for the rest of this season. Get him out of there.
All right. He's officially been banned for the rest of this season. We'll see what happens next year. But wow.
Seth with an elite comment here. Seth, one of our Bears contributors here at On Tap Sports Net. I don't know much about hockey, but I'm familiar with Chicago teams not playing a complete game. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you should take up Blackhawks hockey a little bit there, Seth.
It's the definition of it. And Jason was right here. He says Hawks don't play 3 periods of hockey very often. It's true. But I'll tell you what, I think at least, Tony, for me, things I'm encouraged by, Frank Nazar looks like he's fucking hashtag back.
I was getting concerned. Games. I was getting very, very concerned.
Sure. Like I think you weren't alone.
The contract was starting to, almost potentially bother me with the level of production after he came back from the injury. And again, you don't know how fast someone is fully recovered from that and what sort of effects they have and just getting back in the groove. But Frank Nazar was starting to really concern me because I started seeing takes out there with people saying like, what if he's just a fourth line, third line guy? And I don't think that that's Frank Nazar's profile. You don't want to see that happen. I think there's still a ton of runway here, Ron, for other struggles that he can have. But, man, it was starting to get a little dark and scary on the Frank Nazar trade.
Yeah. No,
the lights went out for a significant period of time.
You're absolutely right. And I think the injury had a little bit to do with it. I think he was a little snake bitten there at one point in the season as well. That just unfortunately didn't go his way.
You've seen a couple of guys on this roster get snake bitten.
For sure. Voodoo says here, still third on the team in points. He's actually technically fourth on the team in points. There's a two-way tie for third. Ironically, it's Andrei Burakovsky, speaking of people that were snake bitten, and Teuvo Teravainen are both tied at 31 points. Bertuzzi with 47. Obviously, Connor Bedard leads the team 60 points in 51 games. But notably for Nazar here, he's only played 48 games because of the injury. He still has 30 points on the season. Only 9 goals, but 30 points on the season. If he was to play a full 82, even with the cold streak, that puts him on about a 51-point pace, according to my math. So a 50-point season out of your second line center is pretty nice, right? So I think just for Frank, I think he's had a lot of bad luck this year in his sophomore year. And really, I mean, technically, it's still technically kind of his rookie year because he didn't play the full season last year in the NHL. So we'll have to wait and see there. And this is an electric
This is the second time I've heard this name come up.
It is. Anthony Tony here says, I was worried Frank was going to be Victor Stahlberg part 2. It's funny. So, yeah, speaking of Victor Stahlberg, Tony and I were talking about the Boston University Terriers with Sacha Boisvert. Well, no Sacha Boisvert tonight. Again, we'll get to that a little bit later. But I was informing Tony of some hashtag Blackhawks legends that played for their opponent tonight, the Vermont Catamounts. And one of those names was Victor Stahlberg. The other one is Patrick Sharp. So if you didn't know that before, that's where those guys play hockey at the University of Vermont. In
little factoids from GM Ron.
Yeah, little factoids. I have a Vermont Catamounts t-shirt with Sharp's name and number on the back that I got because one of my cousins went to school at University of Vermont. So that's I love that this has
come up twice tonight.
Yeah, it's good. And I like this from Voodoo here. Need a favorite of the Hawks other guys segment. Yeah, that would be fun. The other guys of the Hawks, just sicko names, just pulling them out of left field and sets that can't be a real team.
That's how the conversation started.
That's it. Yeah, because I said I said the Boston University Terriers, and I said, do you know what the University of Vermont's or what they're called? I said they're the Catamounts, and that's actually what they are. They're the Vermont Catamounts. It's like another name for a cougar. Unreal. We love that. Wow, 2 Victor Stahlberg mentions in a day. That's elite. But again, I think
close Frank to a hat trick here, man.
We are close. Frank getting back on track is great. Andrew Mangiapane getting his first goal as a Hawk, kind of a dirty, gritty goal. Things you like to see as well. I mean, Bedard had.
I like the Mangiapane goal. Right place, right time.
Yeah, go to the net.
It was Donato that was shooting that puck.
Yeah,
man, Donato, it felt like they couldn't buy a goal in that first fucking half of that game, dude.
Frank almost had another assist.
They had like no shots on goal for over 12 minutes.
Yeah, because their only quote unquote shot on goal hit the post because Burakovsky could have buried the open netter, and then he was able to get it back later, which he
I didn't think that was going to do him any favors if he didn't score that Upper Peninsula, as we deemed it earlier. I thought there was going to be a riot, and it was going to be hard for Andrew Burakovsky to get out of the United Center.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was gonna be rough as well. But in addition, Drew Comesso was brilliant in that OT win against the Mammoth. Bedard was everywhere. I mean, he didn't score, but led the team in hits. Had an assist on the GWG and OT from Frank Nazar. And then again, I had a really nice goal in Dallas to even it up to send it to OT despite that loss on Sunday. Kind of a seeing eye shot from the high slot, which was again good to see. And Mikheyev also having some pretty good games here as well. He had a 2-point night in that 6-3 loss to Vancouver on Friday. So just some notes. Again, I think this team, like we've talked about, this is about turning the page, and these young guys minus Burakovsky, Teuvo, Bertuzzi, and Donato are, they're kind of leading the charge. And, it's something that we're going to have to see. I've seen a couple of notes on this name already. So I'm just going to bring up the question regarding this player, if I can find it, because the comments are fucking popping off tonight, which we appreciate everybody that's joining us. Jason asked, speaking of Ilya Mikheyev, do you think Ilya Mikheyev gets an extension since they held on to him through the trade deadline, just like they did last year with Ryan Donato. As Jason follows up, says Hawks should have traded Donato last year for a career year. He's been largely a no-show this year. I mean, he still has like 13, 14 goals. I mean,
I don't consider him to be a no-show this year so far. I think you're getting exactly the sort of I don't know, the follow-up campaign to a career year, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I expected. You're gonna overpay a little bit for it, and I like Ryan Donato on this team. I think most of the goals he scores are truly grit goals. There's a little bit of fancy to it sometimes, but that just makes for a highlight reel play. He goes to the dirty areas. He's still involved in what I would like to say is the players that show up in periods that the whole rest of the team doesn't show up in. Mm-hmm. So, that's just what I've liked about Ryan Donato's game. I think that, like you look at free agency coming up this year, Ron, and this is going to be a topic we probably talk about over and over again. But I think it's hard to even go and acquire a Ryan Donato in free agency and give him that kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Donato in this year's free agent crop would be considered one of the better players that's available.
Look at the available free agents.
It's a lot of older guys, which we all know the Blackhawks are not targeting guys that are late 30s, in the tooths of their career. Like there's still some good players, but these are guys that are probably going to go sign with contenders for little money rather than coming to the Blackhawks and competing that way. And I will say this too, and I think Anthony Toney has a great point here. Too many fans look at offensive stats, not just the other aspects of the game. You mentioned the grit that Donato brings. He's actually having a career year in terms of face-off percentage. He's still below 50%, but 48.5%. That's best in his career, and he's played quite a bit of center over the years. And for what it's worth, I know
we didn't even answer the question. We will get to the question. Keep going.
We will get to the question, but with Donato right now, Tony. He's on pace to even if you take out last year's season, that 62.31 goal season, right? Just completely take out that one because it was an outlier. He's still already on pace to have what would otherwise be a career best season this year. He's at 27 points right now, which his best season prior to last year was 31. So I would expect him to blow that out of the water. And his best year prior to that goal scoring, but minus again the 31 goal season, was 16. He's at 14. So he's $4 million. $4 million in 2 years.
I think that's a good value.
$2 million contract. Yeah, I think it's a great value.
I think that's great value. Do I think Ilya Mikheyev gets an extension? I hope so. I know everybody wants to see, the young guys come in and, take this over, but you also want to add, like, there's this disconnect between, I want to see all this youth movement, right? And I want to add a star to the team. And Nightmare has it right here. A legit fourth line star. That's a guy that you want on your team in the playoffs. I think Ilya Mikheyev is definitely someone that you want on your team in the playoffs. And Ron, I think I've said this to you before. There were certain people that played on the third and fourth line for the Chicago Blackhawks in the Golden Era that would never have been a household name if they didn't play for the Chicago Blackhawks during that tenure. And Ilya Mikheyev is definitely a name that you will know if this Blackhawks team makes a deep run. And I think it would behoove them to give him an extension.
Yeah, I think there's a legitimate case to be made. I think really what it's going to come down to, hashtag the other guys. I think what it's going to come down to for Mikheyev is just, it's going to come down to the term. You and I ironically talked about this the other day as well. I think it's going to come down to term. That's to me. That's the
I don't like that as a negotiation point, because I think the Blackhawks are going to want to limit term on this deal.
Bingo.
However, if there's someone that if you have to go 4 years on instead of 3, I think you have to look at Ilya Mikheyev and say, what has this guy done for our penalty kill? Mm-hmm. If you look at the body of work, I think he's been pretty special in terms of just being a guy that gets shit done in aspects of the game that other guys can't. And
Yeah.
it's not always going to look as pretty on the stat sheet, but he shows up in moments. And I think that Ilya Mikheyev is probably someone you might want to pay.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we have to think about. And Voodoo says it here. They need to pay somebody. They do. There's a reason that keeping Donato and Teravainen and Bertuzzi and those guys
and
around.
What is he
They
going to cost that
need the
max,
money.
Ron? $6 million?
Well, and so that's where I was getting to. Anthony Tony kind of teed it up on a platter here for us and says, what does a Mikheyev extension look like? I think if the Blackhawks are signing the extension, it's a 2-year extension. I would happily give him $6 million a year. I think that's completely affordable. It's not going to hurt them. It's certainly going to help them get to the floor. He gets a really nice payday out of it. That'll be by far the most he's made in his
What
career.
other vets do they have locked up right now? I know like a lot of this, and I don't want to, we're in GM Ron territory right now for sure. Outside of knowing that you're going to need to pay Bedard a ridiculous amount of money, like what veteran do you have on a deal that doesn't look good? So even if you had to extend that to $7 million, does that really break the bank? Or are we starting to get into the territory in your mind of now we're starting to overpay on bad deals? Because I think that's that fine line. And Kyle Davidson so far has not stepped over it.
And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind with all this here, Tone. When I look at this roster right now, next year, you still have Bertuzzi under contract. You still have Burakovsky under contract. You still have $34 million next season committed to your forward group. It's still a fair amount of money. You also got to remember, Nazar's extension kicks in next year. That'll make him the highest paid forward out of anybody under contract right now. Bedard's going to get probably, if I'm a willing and betting man, Bedard's probably getting 14.
12 to 14 is somewhere where I have that.
I think he's 100% getting 14. I don't think that's completely out of the question here. And
I agree with our guy Nightmare 3-2 here. Bedard has to be the first domino.
100%.
And I think that's why I'm pissed off that they have not gotten this done yet. And I understand why they haven't. From both camps, I understand why they haven't. But man, it would be so much better for business if they had it done already.
Yeah, I mean, it would. But I mean, kudos to Bedard for holding out, knowing he's going to get more money, because he played awesome this year when he wasn't hurt. I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. He's been the player that they expected him to be. But again, Tone, that's going to happen. That's why you got to take the wins when you can and get guys like Frank Nazar locked up early, or Alex Vlasic. That looks like one of the best contracts in the NHL right now at $4.6 million for the foreseeable future. That's why you're not going to win all of them. Like, yeah, it's good for business, but we know in the world of business, you don't always get what you want. And that's kind of just what's happening here in terms of Bedard. But, they'll have enough money. And I have a thought on this. We have other things that we need to continue discussing that I want to give adequate time for on this show, but we'll somehow spin this back around a little bit here to the Connor Bedard discussion.
We've gotten down the rabbit hole of
Tony, if I'm being honest, sir, I could tell you we don't have time to go down the rabbit hole, and we'd still find a way to get down the rabbit hole. So
yes, that's true.
It doesn't matter.
That is true. It doesn't.
This show. And I do agree here with Voodoo. 14 isn't as scary because the cap is taking huge jumps in the near future. So
14 still kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, but it's one player at 14. You had two players on 10.5 when 10.5 was egregious.
I know.
So, yes, Voodoo, you are the king of getting us to go down these rabbit holes. So thank you very much for pushing us in that direction. Tony, again, we'll circle back to that a little bit, probably within our ruffle some feathers and or stick taps here when it's all said and done. But let's talk a little bit about the guy. I know the man you've been itching to talk about forever because you weren't able to join me on the last show, and as Voodoo noted a little bit earlier, Kyle from Chicago. Mr. Kyle Davidson's been in the media a lot.
Yes.
Recently. He was on The Stretch, which is Barstool Chicago's show with a friend of this program from a long, long time ago, Mr. Chief, as well as Eddie and White Sox Dave, who I know you've met and have discussed in the White Sox world with Mr. Dave. And then also, again, as we noted a little bit earlier in the show, was on CHGO Blackhawks today with Jay Zawaski and Greg Boysen. So he's been in the media. He's been talking a lot. And I think Barstool Chicago pushed a little harder on some questions, in my opinion. I think Chief did a really nice job with that interview. More so than maybe CHGO did. It felt like they kind of walked around on eggshells a little bit today. But I think Kyle Davidson, he was my stick tap from last show because we were going to get really deep into it. And unfortunately, you and I couldn't. But he was my stick tap, I think, for just, he's being pretty honest. And I think that's important here because, yeah, he's not showing his hand per se. And this is exactly what we want to do. But I think he's being very upfront and honest with people of just how they go about operating in the front office in terms of improving this team. And I think that's healthy for this fan base to hear because I think there's so many people that are freaking out. Like he said today, everybody, speaking of the Connor Bedard extension, everybody, people are afraid that it's not going to get done. And Kyle Davidson goes, I'm not. He's like, I'm not afraid of it not getting done. We've been in discussions. We've been in contact with them. We mutually agreed that we would table it for the season. I think he's in better position and control than people realize when it comes to stuff like that. And I just think it's been very interesting to listen to a lot of the things that he's had to say. And this is actually really fucking cool coming up in the comments. Hello from Blackhawks fan in India. That's awesome. Hello. Welcome to the show. We hope you are enjoying everything going on here. That's pretty cool, Town. We're literally all the way around the world right now talking about Blackhawks hockey and Blackhawks fans all the way around the world, which is also equally as cool.
Yes, it is. Wow.
Sorry. I really distracted you. Yeah, my bad on that.
You did. Hello from Chicago to India. Ron.
Electric.
The Kyle Davidson talk. I think that there's some merit to a lot of the things that I'm seeing right now from this trade deadline. And I merit to some of the fans who are disappointed because I want to point out to the fact that you've got a large fan base that is waiting for this team to win again, and they want to win soon. And you saw a great start from this team. We can't argue it. That it was a fantastic start to the season.
Absolutely.
They were somewhat exceeding expectations. You had a real positive momentum going for year. I get, what do you want to call this? Year 3, year 4? I think that's sort of debatable amongst fans. But you had yourself in somewhat of a playoff position. We've talked about, Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar getting injured. And then you have this sell-off, right? And there is a largely vocal fan segment of sort of what I would call your common fans who are disappointed that this has continued on again. We get to the trade deadline. We're selling off our veteran players, guys who've been here, your longest tenured player, things that don't exactly matter to the fan who's all tuned in and saying hey, I'm going to spend some time following what Nick Lardis is doing down in Rockford because he could be a piece. But your fan who gets their headlines knows that Connor Murphy's been here for, 10 years.
Sure.
I think Kyle Davidson has done a good job in this day and age of hitting the social media fan, but maybe not the common fan, the Blackhawks fan from the generation prior. Nightmare 2 says they get their headlines from CHGO. Sure. From a media standpoint, there are a lot of fans that are out there that get their headlines from CHGO. But there's also fans who've tuned in and just listened to the radio or just watch the TV broadcast and get the newspaper at the front of their driveway and read the columnist in the newspaper and don't have the same level of insight into what's going on. I think the Blackhawks have done a bad job of helping carry that generation over with some of the moves. And I think that's fair to point out that, the history of what it was to be a Blackhawks fan has been seemingly lost in a business decision to target a different generation. And I think that was sort of visible on Friday night when you talked about, their fourth celebration of the season, the next stars of hockey. So there are people out there who feel like they've been lost in what's been happening from a fan standpoint, Ron. And I think that Kyle Davidson's sort of at the forefront of that. And I think it's fair for people to kind of question, hey, what's the direction here? Because they're not getting that same messaging.
Yeah. And I think, and again, I think the common fan, though, is also, this era of Blackhawks hockey was always going to be looked through a different lens by the common fan because of what happened previously with the Stanley Cup years. It's just the truth. Because John McDonough came in and was the PR wizard at that time and hit all the right buttons, and the Blackhawks were everywhere and they were winning. And they were also ready to win, right? They brought that in they brought him in at a time when that was kind of ready to take off. Now, and then obviously they had a ton of success. And of course, the star players, they had a lineup full of arguably maybe 6 Hall of Famers for a majority of those Cup years. 2 of them are already in the Hall, and Marian Hossa and Duncan Keith. Kane and Taves are going to be there someday. I would make a case for Brent Seabrook until the day I die. And even I would even argue maybe a Patrick Sharp, that at least there's a case to be made, but at least 4 Hall of Famers in that lineup. Like, they saw the greatest era of Blackhawks hockey. And a lot of them became fans because they didn't know about the team like when I was younger and a kid, because they weren't on television. So it was a dramatic change. Now, the common fan had already kind of checked out because they started to lose, first off, right? Even at the end of the Taves and Kane era, they weren't very good. And now they're all sitting there going, well, what's next? You got Connor Bedard. It's hard to look at it because they're expecting a repeat of what just happened. And that's not completely fair either. I think it's fair to question. I question all you want. But you also just witnessed the greatest era of Blackhawks hockey. Nothing's going to compare to that right now. Nothing. Unless this team wins another cup with the new faces. That's going to be the only way that the quote-unquote common fan is going to feel completely re-engaged again, Tone. And, but I think in this, again, I think it's completely fair to question, where things are going and things like that. But I think this team is on a good track. And you have to, create teams a little differently nowadays than you did before. You and I have talked about it nauseam about free agency being dead. I know it's been talked about in our comment section.
Oh, it gets me so mad. And I hope all the listeners know it gets me so fucking mad that I text Ron about how bad free agency is and
it's
how
awful.
I want them to sign, the Marian Hossa fucking signing that takes this team to the next level.
And we might not see that for at least another 5 years, in the sense of, I'm not saying the Hawks doing something like that. I'm saying in the sense of the market getting back to that point.
Oh yeah, no, because it's got to catch itself at some point. It's gonna swing back the other way.
100%.
There will be a time, in my opinion, where free agency is once again the way that you can acquire players. It doesn't feel like that's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years.
No, you're probably looking beyond 5. So again, I think, with Kyle Davidson in the public here, though, I think it's good, though, that the quote unquote common fan can now hear him speak about some of this stuff. And I agree. And Voodoo dropped it somewhere in here earlier. Here it is. The post deadline presser is a must watch. I agree. Like, watch that stuff. That's headlines, right? That's something that the common fan has easy access to. I know everybody's got a fucking YouTube account nowadays. Go on the Blackhawks YouTube page and find it. And it's like 20 minutes, and you can just you don't need to watch it physically. He's just sitting at a podium talking. You can just throw it in your headphones when you're working in your day and listen to it and hear what he has to say. I think, it's going to be interesting here. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things he said in today's interview that kind of excite me in a way, in the sense of, Voodoo says here, right? They have a bajillion first and second round picks. Free agent isn't as impactful because we have assets. And Kyle Davidson said that too. He goes, right now, the way that the market is, you need to have these assets if you want to be a player in the trade market. And the Hawks have positioned themselves that way. They have 3 years of pretty strong assets in the higher rounds and he even said, I think it's important that he gives the look behind the curtain to fans, because Tony, you and I know this. Probably a lot of the people watching this show right now know this, but the common Blackhawks fan probably just sits there and goes, well, why don't you just trade for so-and-so? I was able to acquire him in my NHL franchise. That's not how this shit works. Right? Their teams are going to have a list of guys that they're not going to trade you no matter what you offer them. That, teams are not just, it's not just willy-nilly that guys become magically available and all the right buttons to push. Like Kyle Davidson said today, it's fluid. He said, but I am not going to turn down an offer that's going to make this team better. If there's a trade out there for us to be made to get better, we're going to make it. And I think that's encouraging that maybe they are going to be a little bit more aggressive, because Elliot Friedman also just said the other day, again, when Elliot says shit, I listen, because he's the most connected insider that exists in hockey. He said he believes, and there's a lot of belief around the league, that the Blackhawks are going to amp it up and be a little more aggressive this offseason than maybe previously expected. And I think that's encouraging, because I think they have to. I think they know they have to. Sure. And I think they do as well. But now you're in a position where if Florida slips into the top 10, you got 3 2027 first round picks. This year, you have 3 second round picks. You got 2 seconds in each of the next 2 years. And you have a pick.
That's a lot of things that you can move that are valuable to
not every one of those
might still actually be in a playoff hunt, because you've acquired all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you when you think about where the Hawks are right now, and I think that this is what gets me a little excited about the opportunity here of what he's acquired. And again, he hasn't shown it yet. Mm-hmm. So I will remain skeptical until it happens. But if you can package those for a start, it's going to be more advantageous for you than going out and signing someone in free agency, just based on the market that you have in free agency versus trade.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a fascinating one here that I want to steer this conversation here really quick, because I think it's worth noting before we start to get to some of our habitual segments. Anthony Tony says here, ramp it up with an offer sheet. And
you're a big fan of the offer sheet.
No, I'm not. Well, it depends. It all comes down to money, but right now, so many teams can afford all these contracts that would normally make sense with an offer sheet, that I don't really think the Hawks are in some magical position in order to do it. And I think what a lot of people...
Can we talk about the horrible tweet that was out there on the timeline in terms
Yes.
of offer sheets with Bedard?
We will.
I'd like you to read that one out for everybody.
I will have to pull that one back up. But there was a question. It was from Jason Hawks fan. I'm trying to find it again. The comments, you guys have been absolutely electric tonight because I like when I struggle to find comments.
Yeah,
that's
keep giving us more comments so Ron can struggle. I enjoy watching him try and scroll through this stuff.
Yeah, he enjoys watching me look like I'm calculating rocket science right now, trying to find this damn thing. But he asked about players that are potential offer sheet candidates this year, and I've got something in the works that I've been working on for a hot minute now of players that the Hawks could target in the offseason, like big names that they can go out and get and ultimately, improve this team with. And I think it's possible. I really do. I would not be shocked if this Hawks team does ramp it up. And maybe it's not with an offer sheet, Tone. You mentioned it because again, it has to be your own picks that have to go. It's not like you can use other picks that you've acquired from teams. But what you can do is, you can use some of those picks to trade for a player's rights and then give them that big contract. And I'm fucking struggling to find this. I have no idea where this went. But the other one, some of the names that were on there.
The comment section, 1, Ron Luce,
yes.
0.
Ron Luce, 0. Jason Robertson was a name. Anthony Tony brings up a couple more names here. Dorofeyev. That's a name that I've got on my radar too, Tony. There's a lot of guys.
I think that name might have been typed out.
It was
in a draft on OnTap Sportsnet that's unreleased.
It is. I will. It's a 6-name list. And yes, Dorofeyev is one of the names I'm keeping an eye on because I don't foresee Vegas being able to afford him. I mean, he's an elite goal scorer, the type of player that the Blackhawks certainly could go out and acquire. So again, I think there's going to be a position where they do some fun shit this offseason, and having those plethora of picks is going to help that. So, kind of bringing it back full circle here, we were talking about the trade deadline earlier. They've positioned themselves now where they can get aggressive and utilize some of these assets without having to, trade from your roster or trade key young players that you want to keep. You're not having to trade a Roman Kanserov or an Anton Frondel to get an impact player. You can move a lot of these draft assets and maybe a prospect that is either a little further away or maybe just doesn't fit your timeline as much as Kyle Davidson originally thought, and improve the team that way. Tony, as always, quick standings update. Blackhawks are actually 9 points out of a playoff spot as of when I put together our rundown today. So I was at about 5:00 this afternoon. Obviously, that can change tonight with game action, but you get the deal. Still 13 points clear of the basement, though. Vancouver's got that one sewn up so far. Really quick, the Sacha Boisvert watch. Why are we on Sacha Boisvert watch? Well, as I mentioned, Boston University won tonight, so their season continues. They continue on in the Hockey East tournament. Now, again, there's a chance that they are eliminated. They probably will be at some point here in the near future. As this
didn't you say that they were leading tonight?
They were, but the game ended 4-1. They got an empty netter and finished off Vermont. So they will push forward. But Sacha Boisvert was a healthy scratch for BU in a do or die game for their season, which was kind of a puzzling move. Even though
is it concerning to you that he was scratched?
It almost feels like a message, Tone, because I think he's made it so public that he's turning pro. And I think BU was just kind of like, all right,
I like that
you're better. You think you're better than us? You're scratched. You're not even going to play. You have no impact on if our season continues.
So I saw a tweet out there tonight from someone connected with Boston, and they said that they wondered if that would increase his likelihood to sign with Chicago sooner, despite even if they won tonight. And I'm not an expert on college hockey and how the contracts all work, but that was the first inkling that I had that you might see him in a Hawks uniform sooner rather than later.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. what happens with Boisvert. But that's why we're on Sacha Boisvert watch. It's when does he join the Blackhawks? Because we know he's going to get a cup of coffee here at the end of the season to play some games with the team. So that's why we're on watch. Now, to your point, Tony, whether he leaves BU early, or not, remains to be seen. But even then, BU had their worst season in over 10 years.
Shouldn't we also be on Anton Frondel watch right now?
We should be, but I believe it's you and I looked into this. They finished their regular season on Saturday, and then I believe the playoffs, which they'll play that 3-game round robin, or not round robin, but the 3-game play-in series on, I'm assuming at some point next week. But if they lose, because then it goes to best of 7 series from there. So if they lose in that first round, we could see Frondel before the end of March as well, which would be super exciting. And yes, Lebowski says it here. Frondel watch is absolutely underway. So 2 exciting names to keep an eye on for the Blackhawks as we get a little closer to the end of the season. Tony, let's get into it, shall we?
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
Tony, I've done a lot of talking. I'll give you the microphone first here. How are you ruffling some feathers this evening?
Hey, Ron, I've taken a lot of time to think about this. In fact, like 30 minutes ago, I didn't even know what I was going to say here. But my ruffle some feathers is this. I've seen some takes out there on X, and I'm sure you've seen them too, that this team needs to just tank once again and lose as many games as possible to secure some draft position. I kind of also wholeheartedly disagree with that. Winning is cool and tough. Losing is lame and weak. And it's time for the Chicago Blackhawks to build a winning culture. I'd like to see this team win as many games as possible down the stretch. Fuck the draft position. Let the ping pong balls take care of it, because winning hockey is funner than watching losing hockey. And we've done this whole tank for the draft position over and over again. And the one way that you can build that momentum that you talked about just a little bit ago, to encourage maybe that one free agent or that guy in a trade to waive a no-move clause, is because the youth of this organization are winning hockey games down the stretch against quite a significant schedule here that we've seen the Blackhawks play up to versus play down to in some aspects. So I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. We've got some people already, throwing this out there. They can't tank right. That's what I want to hear on the timeline, because I want to see Blackhawks victories down the stretch, Ron.
I love that. That didn't ruffle my feathers. That fired me up, but it'll ruffle somebody's feathers. That's for damn sure. I'm a big fan of that one, Tom. I'm a big fan. We do have a comment for ruffling feathers here. Voodoo says NWI Steve's headbands are dumb. That's kind of funny.
There's a lot of NWI Steve in this podcast. There's,
there is a lot of NWI.
Cool it down on the NWI Steve.
Catching strays on the Four Feathers podcast this evening is NWI Steve, which is always funny to see. There was also a comment here, just really quick, that I wanted to note. Frondel as well as Pridham and Vanacker. Vanacker and Pridham both play on pretty good teams in the OHL. Or just the CHL. Yeah, no, they're both in the OHL. Oh, excuse me. I'm getting over a sinus cold. Pardon me. They might not even play any level of professional hockey this year because they just go so deep in their respective tournaments. But even then, because CHL guys have the agreement, and it's just too late in the season for them, they could join the Ice Hogs on an amateur tryout. We saw Lardis do that the year before he ultimately, finished out in the CHL. I could see Pridham and Vanacker maybe joining the Ice Hogs for a cup of coffee, but they will not be Hawks when it's all said and done. So we'll have we'll have to wait and see there. I will say, Tone, I've got two. One of them is just a very quick one that I'll save for the second. But my first one is I love Seth getting a hockey education here tonight. Ice Hogs. Now I know you're making.
Has he never watched hockey before?
I guess not. Seth, I'll tell you right now, brother. Go over to theahl.com, theahl.com. Go to all the teams. You'll find the Rockford Ice Hogs, and that's the Blackhawks minor league affiliate team that plays out in Rockford, Illinois, of all places. So I promise you, I am not making shit up. This comes from Johan Svensson, who I don't know who Johan Svensson is exactly. Looks like covers hockey in Sweden. So take that for what that is. Anton Frondell is now up to 25 points this season in the SHL. 18 of which are goals. He just scored that 18th goal, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago, in 41 games. Leo Carlsson, who famously went one draft spot behind Connor Bedard in the 2023 NHL draft, at the same age as Frondell, also had 25 points, but he had 10 goals and 15 assists in 44 games. So if Frondell tallies a point in these last two games, they play tomorrow being Thursday and Saturday, he will have already eclipsed what Carlson did at the same age. He's a first-year player that's under the age of 20. Scoring 18 goals in the SHL is fucking unheard of. And even Svensson said that. He says, a first-year U20 player scoring 18 goals. Wow. He said, Frondell is a lock for the world championship team. A lock. Think about that. That's where all the pro guys play that missed the playoffs in the NHL.
Ooh.
U20 player is going to make as a lock for for Team Sweden, the World Championships. That's crazy. A good friend of the program of ours, Mr. Tab Bamford, quote tweeted that. And this is where we're going to ruffle feathers. He says, maybe bringing in this kind of prospect would be a, quote, significant add for the Blackhawks forward group next season. Tab is absolutely fucking correct. Because here's the thing, Tony. We talk,
Are we still in the ruffling feathers tree?
Oh yeah. I'm coming. I'm coming.
There's a lot of people who don't like Tab Bamford online.
Yeah, there are not a lot of people that like Tab online, but I'm here to ruffle some feathers. Now, here is the thing about everybody's they need to add a star. They need a couple more stars. They got to get them from somewhere. Tony, in fact, you were saying that exact same thing in recent conversations between you and I. They need to go get a star. They need to go get this guy. Sometimes you got to figure out if you have stars in your own midst. And they just got to play. And that's where the Hawks are right now. So when everybody was upset that, this lineup very well could just be a lot of young guys again next season, it could be. You know why? Because you got two guys that could be fucking superstars coming over from Europe. Anton Frondell has 18 goals in the SHL. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to fucking score in Sweden. 18 goals. You know what Leo Carlsson's doing right now for the Ducks? He's a point per game player, and he had less points in goals in the SHL. Anton Frondell could come over here and put up Ovi-like goal numbers for all we know. And then Roman Kantsarov is having one of the best U20 hockey seasons ever in the KHL. He's lighting it up, in fact, as Anthony Tony says. Absolutely correct. Roman Kantsarov may come over and be the next coming of Nikita Kucherov or one of these other Russian superstars. Do you know how you find out what you have in those guys? You let them fucking play meaningful minutes. And sometimes, Tone, you just got to let the kids play. And I am totally for that because I think the Hawks have some legit dudes coming up in the pipeline. And we're going to get to see those next season. And Tony, here's the other thing. And you mentioned it, we talked about criticizing Kyle Davidson. You know how you can criticize Kyle Davidson? When 90% of your roster next year is his work and his young guys that he drafted and scouted and this front office developed. Now you can start to kind of light a fire under his seat a little bit if things don't go right. Because, hey, this is the first wave, like full wave of your guys.
But, dude, we should have been doing that a little bit earlier.
But
and
how?
I think we've had this conversation before.
But you have to let guys develop, Tone.
I know you have to let guys develop. I think it's fair criticism to say that he misspoke a year ago when he said this team was going to take a step forward. And that makes it into, did it take a step forward?
Yes.
Last season, did it take a step forward?
Oh, no, I'm saying coming into this season, they said.
Oh, this season we took a step. I think we took a step forward, but I don't think it was as great as what the step forward looked like at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, because there was injuries to two of your key pieces that sent that bitch really quick off the rails.
And that's fine, but injuries happen.
Sure.
And you have to have that depth. I was listening to, the Chicago Hockey Show, ESPN Radio 1000, Pat Boyle, Chief. I think this was either last week or the week before. I think it's fair to sit there, and I believe Chief brought this up, and talked about how a lot of the guys that this roster has on it in terms of the youth are pretty high floor, but potentially low ceiling guys. And I think it's fair to look at that and say, is that the case with an Artem Levshinov? Is that the case with the Sam Rinzel? Is that the case with a Frank Nazar? Can they be the types of guys? We're not far removed from seeing the Olympic show that Team USA and Canada put on in the final. You want your guys to be at that level. The Hawks currently don't have anyone on their team that was selected to represent their country outside of Teuvo Teravainen. There's still a talent gap here when you look at it from that regard. And I know we can get into the politics of Connor Bedard not being selected for Team Canada. That's fair. But you need other guys on this roster who are going to be difference makers enough to play in the Olympics if this team is going to go far on a playoff run. And I think that that's fair to say. You can have all the best complementary players in the world, but until they acquire someone else to be a difference maker alongside Connor Bedard, there's probably going to be a problem. So I hope that Roman Kantsarov and Anton Frondel develop into those guys. But I still think, like, if you look at this from a national perspective or even a worldwide perspective, I don't want to get too infatuated with our own talent pool just because we're that close to it against others, because there are Nathan McKinnons out there.
Sure.
And that's fine. Most guys are under 24. That's fair. I hope they develop into that. That's where I want to see them get to.
Yeah. And again, there's going to be some of that time. And Sockside Mike here says, by 2008, the Hawks knew what they had and won a couple in a couple of years. They don't have that this time around. Too many unknowns. That was a different time in the rebuild, though. And again, this is where people get confused because Taves and Kane came at the time they came. They came at the end of that rebuild. Go back and look. 2002 draft is when you got Seabrook and Duncan Keith. Or 2002 is when you got Keith and Dustin Byfuglien, for example. 2003, you got Seabrook and Crawford. 2004, you got.
And look, it was 5 to 12 years later.
Yeah,
when all that golden era came.
Yeah, and then they got Patrick Kane and they got Jonathan Taves. It was a long wait. And I would make the argument that we're probably at about the time where they're getting close to the Johnny Taves and Patrick Kane acquisitions. You just got Connor Bedard at the beginning of your rebuild. It's going to look a little
So
different.
would you say that like this current Blackhawks rebuild is closer to 2006, 2007 than it is 2009?
Yes. 100%. Right now, this very moment, yes. I think 2 years. I think 2 years is when they legitimately start to truly make noise, in the sense of the young guys are at the point where we want, where fans want them to be, and they're playing good hockey, and you've identified who's a piece of this and who's not. And, they kept pushing forward. And this is 100% true. Going into that 08-09 season, there was no cup aspirations. It was just, this team's going to be fun and let's see what happens. And they fucked around and made it to the Western Conference Final. And then they came back the next season and won their first Stanley Cup. And that was obviously the Marian Hossa acquisition and, of course, all those things. So it just, again, I think they could have these guys, and you got to let them play in order to find out what that looks like. So that's my ruffle some feathers, because I think I successfully did that. Also, Tony, my other ruffle some feathers, this one's kind of targeted at you too, but it's more on a fun side. I put in our rundown FH4FL next season, and I don't know if you figured out what that means, but I think it would be electric to have a Four Feathers Fantasy Hockey League next year.
Oh, I did not figure out what that meant. I was doing some work on it there for a little bit. But
I think that's
a Four Feathers Fantasy Hockey League would be great. You and I were talking some fantasy baseball earlier.
We were.
I'm sure we could get some. I'm sure we could get some of the listeners in on the Four Feathers Fantasy Hockey League. We already got some comments coming in.
Yeah, already stepping up. So something to keep an eye on. I mean, we probably could do like a 14-team league and get really thick, and third and fourth liners are getting drafted in these type of leagues. So be on the lookout for that. We've even got a couple more here. Sockside Mike, he's down. The Seth says the loser of the league should have me draft their team the following year. That would be funny. That would be genuinely funny to see what happens. So again, be on the lookout.
I'm down with this. I'm down with this. I think we do need a Four Feathers Fantasy Hockey League next season, and that's something that we're absolutely going to make happen.
Yeah, I haven't played fantasy hockey in 2 years, so I'm kind of itching to get back in the game. And
it's been a while for me.
Yeah, it's fun.
But let's try and make that happen. This will be fun.
It will be for sure. Tony, let's get ready to close this thing out, shall we?
Time to give out some stick taps.
All right, Tony. I'm gonna steal the stick tap here really quick because I'm gonna keep mine short.
Go ahead.
Talked about it a little bit already at the top of the show. Just want to reiterate. Frank Nazar's got his swagger back, and that's really good to see. Stick taps to him. Also really cool. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, go watch it. You can find it in like the Blackhawks highlight package from the OT winner against the Mammoth on Monday. It's cool that Panger says that, this one's for Troy, and the inverse of his number is the person who's the game winner. And obviously, because nobody's wearing 19 right now since Jonathan Taves wore that number. So kind of cool, kind of neat. Just a nice little tip of the cap and extra. But stick taps to Frank Nazar, man. I think he's got his swagger back. And if he keeps that up for the next 15 so odd games through the rest of the season, I think that's going to be huge for his confidence moving into next season.
Love that. I'm so happy that Nazar is back doing his thing. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier. I'm not going to try and draw that out more. We said earlier, Ron, that this show was going to go about 45 minutes. We're almost at an hour and a half. Yeah. I've got two real quick to rattle off. First is a guy by the name of Ryan McGregor. If you haven't followed him on X at Ryan McGregor Shy, he's up there in Canada. He's doing Blackhawks YouTube stuff almost after every game. Had the opportunity to chat with him a little bit the other night, and stick taps to him. Second stick tap, Ron, goes to Andre Burakovsky for getting off the schneid. I thought the half Michigan goal the other night was a thing of beauty. And you don't want to see someone struggle, but we all do it. We all go through periods in our life where shit just ain't working out, and everybody's feels like the world is piled on your back. The pure elation that was on Andre Burakovsky's face after he scored that goal on Monday night.
Yeah.
Like, you can relate to that as a human.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what it is. It was just like the way that he reacted to scoring that goal. Fuck yeah. Like, that's what you want in sports right there is those kind of human stories. So I loved seeing him get off the schneid there, finally put a goal in the back of the net. And it's even better that the Hawks won on Monday night because I didn't have to send Ron 3 voicemails and Andre Burakovsky got himself on the board. So stick taps, Andre Burakovsky, Ron. Those are my stick taps for the night.
I love it. I love it. A fun little one here. Lebowski with a fun story. We mentioned that 2009 Western Conference Final. He says during that, he checked ticket availability on the Red Wings website, and there were tickets available. So he actually went to a Western Conference Final game in Detroit. That's pretty cool. I definitely would. Fun fact, that's the only playoff run ever that I've attended actual playoff games in person. I was at the Martin Havlat game winner against Calgary in the opening series in game 1. And then was at the Patrick Kane hat trick game to eliminate Vancouver in the second round. So some pretty good ones in that playoff run, despite not being a Stanley Cup. That was a really fun one. Tone, what's on tap next? Upcoming slate of games. I noted this a little bit last week, but the Hawks will play again on Thursday night. They are at Utah, so another game with Utah. It's the third time we've seen Utah in the month of March for the Blackhawks. It will be, of course, the final time they see them. That one's on CHSN. It's an 8 o'clock Central Time puck drop. Saturday, then, we got some good old late-night hockey. The Blackhawks are in Las Vegas. This is the penultimate game of the Blackhawks wearing the black jerseys for the season. They're wearing black in Vegas, which will be pretty cool. I'm expecting a black versus gold matchup in this one, which will be pretty sweet. That's a 9 o'clock start, also on CHSN on Saturday night. And then on Tuesday, the Blackhawks are back at the United Center to play the Minnesota Wild. It's a rare 6:30 start time in Chicago, because that one's on TNT. So that's a part of the good old double header for TNT. And then on Thursday, they will be in Minnesota. So a home and home on March 19th. We'll more likely than not be back with you for a show before this game, but that's a 6:30 start as well because it's on ESPN Plus and Hulu only. So be on the lookout for that as well. And a great stick tap here really quick. Stick taps to the hockey world for remembering Troy Murray. Well said. Well said indeed. And Anthony Tony lives in Las Vegas, so he's going to try and get some of those on the Game Time app for this Saturday. We love that. I hope you're able to go and send us some pictures. Tag us on socials at Four Feathers Pod if you're able to get down to old T-Mobile Arena and catch that one in person. Tony, one also huge note here before we start to close this thing out. We have made an amendment to the Games They'll Want Backtracker. You and I went
Yes, we have.
This one. We have added Friday's game against Vancouver to the Games They'll Want Backtracker. Originally, we were saying, well, mostly they're like 1-goal games that they piss away a lead type thing that we have on here. But we had the 5-2 loss against Boston back in January on the banner year celebration night because they were up 2-0 and it got scored 5 unanswered. Tied 3-3 going into the third period, 3 unanswered goals from the Canucks put away the Hawks 6-3. So that one is on the Games They'll Want Backtracker. We are now up to 12 games. When you and I did the math,
yes, we did.
Even if half of these games went the other way, the Hawks are pretty much a playoff team. So something to keep an eye on when it's all said and done for the Blackhawks this season. There's some games they'll want back, and we have added to that since. As always, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. This one was a beefy, long episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Comment section, you guys were fucking rock stars. We appreciate everybody that tuned in. Sorry again for the issues that we had.
Yeah, especially those that tuned in on YouTube because we weren't live on X tonight.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Really appreciate it. I know there was a ton of questions that were in there that we weren't able to get around to answer to. I think this is what I'll make a deal. Anything that was left in the comment section or commented on this video, we'll put those questions in like a little mailbag for the end of next episode. And we'll get around to some of those because these were just really good tonight. And again, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Follow at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Go over to YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell button for On Tap Sportsnet. You'll know when all of our shows go live, including us here at the Four Feathers Podcast. And of course, We appreciate any 5-star ratings wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts as well, or tell us what we're doing wrong if you don't believe we deserve 5 stars. And Tony, of course, head over to ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on the socials and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. My friend, this was a blast. I'm on double duty tonight. I'll see everybody over on Bears on Tap here in just a few minutes.
Plug that show.
Free agency. It's going to be a lot of fun, but this was an electric show as well. I'm glad we were able to get back on the microphone, my friend. And what do you say? Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.